Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. Tonight, we're looking at the New England Patriots at the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's one of the lowest total games in decades for the NFL, 30-point total, with New England as 5.5-point dogs. So it's going to be a brutal game for offense, a great game for defense. And even in a game like this, there's going to be ways to get different. And we have an easy one that we're going to cover in today's episode. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. And tonight we have a slobber knocker between the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're looking at a total of 30 points, and that's probably one of the lowest totals in the NFL in a couple decades from what I'm reading. And New England is 5.5-point dogs in this matchup for good reason. But both these teams are having trouble generating any type of offense. They're both defensive-minded teams. And I'm joined by Spread tonight, Spread Astaire. Spread, what do you think about your general overview of this game, and how's everything going, man?
I'm doing great. Obviously, not the from a fantasy perspective, not the most enticing game tonight. But that's the way that things have gone in the NFL this season. And I don't want to go on too much of a rant, but really with the offensive line play declining because they don't get as much work, and then the defensive ends getting better. Unless you're a really, really good quarterback, it's hard to overcome. So total of 30, and maybe get used to this, if they don't switch things around and let these linemen start playing together, because these teams are getting pressure in the backfield every night. And that might key into something that we're looking into tonight, because if this game were to go under, kickers and defenses become a lot more valuable than our normal skill position players.
Yeah, we had a similar game the other night with the Jets, and I can't remember who they played, but yeah, that was a very similar game with a low total team. Both sides had good defenses, and just one of those situations. I was Miami. Miami is who they were playing, where I wanted to stack up the entire Miami side and just run it back with the Jets D, because that was basically all the Jets had on their end. But Miami has a good D too, so it ended up being like a decent game. But this is a similar matchup, except neither of these sides have a decent offense. So at least with that game, you had the Dolphins, but this side we're looking at two brutal offenses. None of them really score many points at all. New England hasn't scored a touchdown in several weeks, and the Steelers have lost their starting quarterback, Kenny Pickett. It's going to be Mitch Trubisky tonight. On the other side, the Patriots have benched their starting quarterback. It's going to be Bailey Zappe tonight. So we got two backup quarterbacks against two really good defenses, and that does a perfect recipe for a low-scoring game. And in a showdown situation, this can be a good thing, because it's going to be giving us an opportunity to get different. And there's going to be plenty avenues to get different, because everybody's going to be going into this game with the same mindset. So, Spread, let's take a look at this player pool here and see what we're working with. Rhamondre Stevenson is the really the only guy that would have stood out on this slate as a guy with guaranteed points attached to him, and he's out. So we're looking at Zeke Elliott, who has been doing pretty good in Rhamondre's, Rhamondre's replacement. And he's a grind. Like, this is the perfect matchup for a guy like Zeke Elliott. But Spread, what do you think of Zeke Elliott? And maybe we get into a lineup build here, but Zeke Elliott's going to be the highest owned captain tonight. So maybe we just take a brief look at him real quick.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily against that, but I'm fine kind of fading the chalk here. What's the avenue where he gets there? Well, he's going to have to get into the end zone, which is pretty good because he's actually not a bad red zone back. The problem is this offense can't even get down in the red zone where they can use them effectively. The old joke is it's a 20-20 offense, right? Most of the teams can move the ball in between the 20s to 20s. I heard Mike Lombardi talking about the Patriots are a 20-40 offense. They can move the ball about 20 yards per possession, and then they seem to stall out. So I'm going to have Ezekiel Elliott in a lot of the lineups, but I don't like him as captain. What do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting because early in the season, we were targeting Pittsburgh's defense for running backs, and that was with Cam Hayward out.
Mm-hmm.
And for a few weeks there, it was a good matchup for running backs, but then they tightened things up. And since Cam Hayward has been back, they have been really good against the run. Now they are allowing the 24th most DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So it is a bad spot for Zeke Elliott, especially for a guy that is going to be the highest owned captain on the night. And we're coming into this game with kind of perception that New England is going to want to run the ball the entire game, which makes a ton of sense. That's their style, and that's probably what they're going to do. But how are they going to run the ball against this Pittsburgh defense that's not allowing any DraftKings points a game to the running back position is going to be the question. They are allowing, 20 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. That's since week 5. That's not including the, just filtering out the weeks that Cam Hayward has been back. And when Cam Hayward is in, they're only allowing 19.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So that is among the league worst. So it's not a good matchup for Zeke. And when I'm looking at the matchup in general between New England and Pittsburgh, the only green that I see on my spreadsheet is for the wide receiver on the Pittsburgh side. And that's because New England's allowing 20.2 DraftKings points a game to the wideouts. And, we got George Pickens and we got Diontae Johnson in those spots. So, this could be an interesting game for those dudes. And if you look at Mitch Trubisky too, like Mitch Trubisky, he's not much worse than Kenny Pickett is. Mitch Trubisky might be an upgrade over Kenny Pickett. And if we're looking at an upgrade over Kenny Pickett, and you got a team that has some firepower in the wide receiver core, I don't know, Spread. What do you make of that?
For this particular game, I do believe Trubisky's an upgrade. The one weakness of the Belichick defense is mobile quarterbacks. So I believe that Trubisky gives you this here. Trubisky's also in a spot where, this is kind of his last legs of his career as far as making a name for himself. I think he's going to be active in there, running the ball a lot. I like Trubisky a lot as captain. Going through your breakdown, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think the big question of this slate, which receiver do you like more on the Pittsburgh side? Because I feel like you can get almost everyone you want in there, but you're going to have to make a decision between those two. Or, do you just try and find a way to get them both in there? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I like Trubisky a lot tonight, I think, because there's not going to be a lot of fantasy points available. And I've already talked about how I think they overpower rushing yards for quarterbacks. It's a way for them to rack up points. I like Trubisky here, but Pickens and Johnson, who would you rather have? I'm leaning towards Diontae, but maybe I'm looking at this wrong.
I'm leaning towards Diontae as well, because that's who Trubisky has favored when he's been a starter. And Diontae and Trubisky, they just have a good connection. But we know Belichick and what he likes to do with his defenses and honing in on that primary weapon of the opposing offense. Do we think that that's going to be Diontae? Do we think that that's going to be Pickens? I think that's ultimately how we decide which one of those guys to go with. Do we think that Belichick is going to try to, just put all efforts into just stopping that run and letting Trubisky beat them? Or do we think that they are going to take out these receivers and do, like just let the running game do some work against them. I don't know which way would you lean on that spread. Which strategy do you think the Patriots defense is going to take? Because I think that's ultimately what's going to help us make that decision. Because I like Diontae overall, but it depends on where we think that they're going to focus their attention.
I would agree with you there. And the idea is I think that Diontae is easier to scheme out of the game. A guy like Pickens really excels in making contested catches. Diontae really excels in getting separation, finding the right spots in the zones, or beating his man. So with Pickens, you can run the perfect coverage and he can still make the catch. So it seems to me that they would struggle to take out, they would try and take out Diontae Johnson more. My question is, will the targets just be so high? Trubisky, with these backup quarterbacks, they're going to find certain players and just latch onto them. I think another one that we want to have in here is Freiermuth. I think that the tight end is always, the backup quarterbacks is going to love a tight end because you're never going to get yelled. I've said it 1,000 times, right? But when you're a guy that's fighting for your job, you're not going to get yelled at for attacking the matchup with the linebacker, right? You're going to get yelled at for throwing into double coverage, attacking the other team's best corner. So while I do think that Belichick might try and put Diontae Johnson out there, I lean towards having Diontae Johnson, but it's one of those same things. And we did this last week where we just, run two. I think that you can make a lot of lineups and just dupe them, one with Diontae and one with Pickens. They're right around the same price.
Yeah.
So I prefer Diontae. I'll have him in more lineups. My final question for you is, are you trying to build with both of them in there? In a game where we don't expect a lot of points, I don't know if that's the smartest build. I almost feel like you should take a stand. What do you think?
I think you got to take a stand, and I think that rotational strategy is going to work great tonight because those are the only two guys that I'm really honed in on as far as wide receivers on the Pittsburgh side. And they're both going to be super low owned in the captain spot. They're both under 10% owned. So it's going to be a good spot for us to kind of focus maybe on the passing game of Pittsburgh in the captain spot, and that includes Trubisky as well. Normally, I shy away from quarterbacks in that spot, but with running quarterbacks, it's a different story. And Trubisky, for the boomers of us who remember the days when Trubisky was running wild for the Chicago Bears and just kind of crushing on a lot of these DraftKings slates, a lot of milli makers were won on Mitch Trubisky's legs back in the day. And he has not really, had a starting opportunity in probably about a year and a half, because it was the beginning of the 2022 season is the last time that Trubisky was a starting quarterback. And that's where Kenny Pickett took over a few games into the 2022 season. Spread, do you remember how much running he did in those days? Like, I can look it up real quick if you want to kind of cover your thoughts on that.
Off the top of my head, no. So why don't you look that up? But I do think that Trubisky's in a good spot here tonight. Normally we wouldn't be saying that, but I just think there's going to be so few fantasy points available that even what we would consider to be a mediocre performance could be at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah. And Trubisky, he's a guy that can surprise. He's one of those guys that can come out of nowhere with a big game. We've seen it out of him before. I'm looking right now at his stats. It looks like he had his first few games with Pittsburgh. He had 3 rushing attempts for 9 yards in this first game, 1 for 7, 2 for 7, 1 for 1, and then 6 for 5. So he didn't do a whole bunch of running, but that's not to say that he won't be doing that against this team tonight, knowing that what Spread said at the top, the weakness or one of the big weaknesses of a Belichick defense is their ability to cover the running quarterbacks. So that sets up Trubisky nicely for tonight. And I mean, it's an opportunity for him to showcase his skills, because he's probably going to want to try to get some sort of a starting opportunity next year or in the future. He had a stretch there. He was the Bills' backup for about a year or so before he moved on to Pittsburgh. So, he hasn't had a starting opportunity in a while, basically. So maybe this is a mentality of his going into tonight's game is, I want to show the league what I got. I still got it.
And even if it's not a starting opportunity, Simon, because I think that ship has sailed. Yeah. He has the opportunity to be a well-paid backup to make $5 million a year for the next 6 to 8 years. If he can show, hey, I can come in on short notice, I can get it done. I mean, we've seen some of these backups here, right? I mean, who was the kid from Syracuse that they threw out there for the Jets? Right? I mean, Doyle. There's no way he should have been out there. So even if a starting opportunity isn't available, it really can cement him as a career backup. And that's not a bad deal, Simon, because I've seen backups get $5 million a year when they've proven that, hey, I'll be better than just a 4th-round rookie that you throw in where the season's lost. I mean, look what the New York Jets, I'll bet you, they wouldn't mind paying $5 million for a competent backup this year. So I agree with everything you say here. A great opportunity here for Trubisky.
And this year, just to add, like, he had 3 rushing attempts last week when he, played a decent amount of that game. And then he had 3 rushing attempts for 18 yards back in week 8, where he played a decent amount of that game against Jacksonville as well. So, not a whole lot, but we're in a situation where.
Let's talk about those, though, right? One of them against Jacksonville. They have an excellent run defense and a poor secondary.
Yeah.
It makes sense that he would try to use his arm even more, right? So I don't necessarily think that those are predictive to the matchup that he's going to see tonight. I think we'll get far more than 3 rushes. And in fact, I think we'll see some designed quarterback runs here because it's going to be hard to get moving on this offense. The final point I want to make here is Pittsburgh has a much higher incentive to win. All these rumors about Belichick, I think this is click farming or whatever they call it, where they're just making news because they have nothing else to talk about. I think he's going to be there. I think Kraft says, let's give him a quarterback. I mean, look what he's done with his defense. It's one of the best defenses in the league, so you can't tell me he's lost it. He simply failed on the general manager side on the offensive end. So I'm thinking you get a Drake May, a Caleb Williams in there, working with that Belichick defense. That could be a beautiful spot for someone. I think the Steelers are going all in on this win, and I think the Patriots want to keep it close. But, I don't – some of the decisions they made, even the Zappe decision, I was, can't remember what we're calling them, happy for Zappe or the funny little Zappe hours, right? We have a bunch of clever things, but he's not better than Mac Jones. It shows to me that they've moved on from Mac. They're in on losing. So that's why I'm going to have a majority of Pittsburgh builds tonight, 4-2, 5-1 Pittsburgh. If the Patriots get the upset, oh well. But I'm going to take a stand, and I don't believe the Patriots are here to win. I believe that they're here to just have a good showing, play the season out, and let the people compete for spots for next year.
Yeah, I'm kind of that same mentality, even though the 4-2 Pittsburgh builds are going to be about 39% owned. But I think we get different by focusing on that passing game as opposed to the running game, because that's where we're going to get some ownership discount, supposedly. Like, this is the projections. The projections have Trubisky, Pickens, and Diontae all under 10% as a projected ownership. It's favoring the running backs in this game for completely understandable reasons, but I think people aren't grasping the idea that both these teams are good against the run. It's not a good matchup for running backs.
Excellent against the run.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Yep. So let's jump into it. Spread. Let's try and build something here. And we both like Trubisky. We both like those receivers. Who do we want to start with our first captain here?
Let's do a Trubisky captain real quick.
Okay.
So we're at 13-8. That gives us 36-2 left. I think if you go Trubisky, you have to add in some Freiermuth. I think the tight end is going to be a popular target. Okay. So that gives us 2 to start here. Now we're at 28-8. We have 72 left. I'd also like to throw the Steelers defense in there.
Okay.
So those are 3 that I'd like to start with in this build. Where do you think we should go from there?
I kind of like the idea of using 2 defenses in a majority of builds tonight, or at least some of them. But I also,
I'm with you.
Yeah, let's throw in that Pats D2. Let's get them in there. That'll work well.
We have our pick of the litter from there on out.
Yeah, basically, like we can put in, if you want to put in between Pickens and John, I'm surprised that Pickens is more expensive than Johnson, but they're both basically the same price at that 10K range.
I think it's the idea that if Belichick decides to take away Johnson, he can, but that Pickens can still make contested catches.
Yeah. Yeah. Which of those guys do you think we should roll with?
Since we got more money, let's throw Pickens in there.
Okay. And like we said, you can rotate those guys out like in your builds. Like this puts us in a 7,200 left. That gives us opportunity. Like Devontae Parker has been a favorite target of Bailey Zappe. Now, here's a little bit of info for you guys, little nugget with Bailey Zappe's starts. He started 5 games between last year and this year, and Parker has been his favorite target in the games that he started. He's had 22 targets. Hunter Henry has had 22 targets. Tyquan Thornton has had 14 targets. He's the 3rd most targeted guy. And then Juju is at 10 targets. So that's a little bit of information. I think in tonight's matchup, Parker or Henry, I could roll with either of those guys in this last spot. How much is Henry tonight? Yeah, they're both in that range. So if you wanted to throw in one of those guys, you could throw in Chris Boswell, because I could totally envision Boswell having a good game tonight. You could use it. Parker, Boswell, Henry, they're all in that same range. Any guys that you like in this range, Spread?
Yeah, sorry, I just submitted the team. I liked where we're landing here. Boswell, to me, I think the Patriots red zone defense is going to be good. I mean, this is going to be – I know a lot of people are going to complain. I think it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that.
Did you see an optimal with 2 kickers and 2 defenses? I mean, it's so crazy.
I mean, it's one of those games. I think a lot of people are going to be going heavier on those positions tonight than is probably optimal. But, it's a game where you want to rotate those guys in. I think there's going to be probably a lot of these two defense builds and stuff like that tonight. And it makes, complete sense because those are the best players on each of these teams. So it's going to be one of those decision points. Do you want to start both these defenses? If we took one of these defenses out, let's say we take out the Patriots D, and we wanted to put in, maybe Boswell, that leaves us with 6,800. Same range, like you could use Parker, Henry, you got all those options. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go with something like that. Gets you a 5-1 Pittsburgh build. If you wanted to swap out Boswell, let's say we put in Parker because he's the guy that Bailey Zappe is going to be leaning on tonight. That puts us at 6,600. So very similar situation. It's just going to be Spread. We talk about it all the time. It's like deciding between these guys, between that 4,600 through 5,400 range. I think that's going to be a big decision point tonight because there's a lot of guys in there that could do even Tyquan Thornton at 3,400. I like him too, just because of all those targets that he gets from Bailey Zappe. They seem to have a chemistry together. So he's going to be interesting tonight. And he hasn't done anything, so he's going to be low owned. He's at 3.9 points last week, 4.2 the week before that. That 4.2 is his highest total on the year. So, it's going to be there's a lot of scrubby offensive weapons in this game. And There's a lot of guys that don't typically get a ton of opportunity. We know that the Patriots love to spread the ball around, and they've randomly picked the guys who have a big week on a given week. This has Hunter Henry week written all over it, as far as I'm concerned. And he's had a couple weeks where he scored over double-digit points, but there's only been 3 weeks where he scored over double-digit points. So he's basically been obsolete, but he's a favorite target of Bailey Zappe, which puts him in play. Same situation with Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker has been the lead receiver basically since Kendrick Bourne has gone out. And even as the lead receiver, he has 1 week over double-digit points apart from week 1. And that was last week when Bailey Zappe was the starter. So Devontae Parker is in play tonight. And, you know, it's going to be interesting building lineups. If we wanted to put in a running back into this lineup spread, who would we take out and which running back would we put in?
This is tough. Let's just talk about the 2 running backs in general.
Yep.
Between Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. I said continuously that I think Jaylen Warren has more burst. He's going to have more PPR potential. The question is, in his knockdown, drag-out game, will Tomlin go for the bowling ball effect, so to speak, of just having Najee Harris pounding it in there, trying to loosen him up? And then, of course, I do believe that Najee Harris will be more likely to have the goal line carries. So I can make good arguments on both sides. For a majority of mine so far tonight that I built, or today, I have Warren in there. But I think that it's like the Johnson Pickens, great options. Tough to see now. It's going to seem pretty obvious by the third quarter, though, right? Which one was the right side here?
Right.
And I think you have to make a decision. I'm not going with both of them, so don't put both of them in your lineup.
Yeah, they got a tough matchup against New England. New England's only allowing 18.8 DraftKings points again to the running back position. Like traditionally, like New England has been vulnerable to the run. But this year it seems like they've kind of taken a effort to do well against the run, and they have been able to stop the run this year. They've also been really good against slot receivers. They're only allowing 16 DraftKings points a game to the slot, and they're only allowing 9.7 DraftKings points a game to tight ends. So they've been good against tight ends. The only position that they've been weak against has been that wideout position. So again, like that's where we kind of put a bullseye on George Pickens and Diontae Johnson. The slot receivers have the best DVOA matchup against New England, and Allen Robinson's in that spot. But Diontae Johnson and Pickens both run some of their routes from the slot. And I just don't trust Allen Robinson to put him in any lineups tonight. So I would probably lean Johnson as far as that matchup goes. But again, like Spread and I were talking about at the top, it could be a situation where they decide to focus in on Diontae and George Pickens, let him battle it out in those contested catches. And, you know, it's going to be an interesting situation, like whichever direction you pick on those. It's going to be a crapshoot as far as I'm concerned. So I would just rotate guys in and out, like when it comes to that stuff. For the running backs, you know, I like Warren too. I think I would look towards ownership to decide on Warren and Najee as well. And then just do the same thing. Just rotate those guys in. Maybe, like Spread said, don't start them together, but rotate them in. And they're the same, you know, they're only $400 in price difference. So if you create one lineup with Najee, create another one and replace them with Warren, basically. Same with those receivers. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the strategy that I would take. I mean, why make the decision? Just do both, you know?
All right. Let's you want to clear that one out, and you want to start with my favorite build?
Yeah, let's do it.
Steelers defense captain.
Okay.
Now let's see where we can go from here. So we start with the Steelers defense. That means we're assuming the Patriots are having a tough day on offense. And like you said, they haven't scored a touchdown in like a month. So I think that's a fairly safe assumption, right? We know that the NFL and anything is possible. So when we're going off the script, we're probably going to see a lot of running. We just talked about making the decision, but I think you lean towards Warren. So you want to put him in there second?
Yep, got him.
I also like Trubisky and Freiermuth here. And we have plenty of money left. So let's say we did this. How would we be looking for the New England run back?
If I'm building my lineup like this, and we got the Steelers D and the captain, and we have all these running backs and Trubisky's legs in there, and Pittsburgh's Freiermuth in there. We're envisioning a low scoring game, and in a low scoring game, anyone can pop off. Anyone can pop off in a low scoring game. So I would either try to squeeze Elliott in there, knowing that he has a tough matchup.
I don't think it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
You're left at 61, and we talked about being comfortable landing in this range.
Yeah.
You have Boswell, you have Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry, or the Patriots defense. I almost want to start and do just four different lineups with those 4 different endings.
Yeah.
All right, but let's break it down. Of these 4 in this script, right, where the Steelers are doing well. Mm-hmm. What do you think? I think it's either Boswell or Henry.
Yeah, for me, it's Parker or Henry, but I like Boswell too. Okay. So
we both agreed on Henry. I'm going to throw Henry in there in the last one and submit it. But I'm going to have some fun landing on those different last spots there.
Yeah, I like that. This is comes down to those same decision points. Like these same group of guys. All of them have decent situations. Parker, I like all of these guys. I like Parker, I like Boswell, I like Henry, and I like the Patriots D. So I like all those dudes. Now, if we were building, so let me clear this out. So we got a direction there that we can go. I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to start off with a Pickens build because I've put Pickens in the captain a few times already this season. So let's keep that ball rolling. Going to put Pickens in there, and I'm going to join him with Trubisky, and I'm going to put that Steelers D in this one too. And I think with this lineup, I'm going to go a little bit different direction, and instead of Freiermuth, I'm going to put in Jaylen Warren into this build, and maybe run it back with Elliott to see where that leaves us. That's 1-8. If I run it back with Parker instead, that leaves us with 5-6 in that same range. So there's a lot of things that you can do to maximize that salary and still land in that same range. Spread.
Yeah, I just like that build. I went a little different than you here on the 4th spot, but those top 3 is a fun way to start.
Yeah,
you start Pickens, Trubisky, and the Steelers, and then you really just fill it in with different options. I'm actually going to make a different hybrid version of the one I just did here, and I'll throw Jaylen Warren in there. And but you're really higher on Parker than I am. That's funny. In that price range, I'd like Henry a little more.
Yeah,
but let me get away from some of that.
Yeah,
Parker.
In here. So I do like Parker, but the thing that makes me nervous about him is that Q. And I never like to see a Q next to Parker's name because that means he's going to play like 2 snaps and he'll be out. So, like thinking about that, like I might lean with you, Spread, on liking Henry a little bit better. I think I just have an affinity for Parker tonight just because knowing the history of him and Bailey Zappe, and Bailey Zappe has been reliant on him. But maybe that opens the door up a little bit better for Henry tonight because the defense will hone in on Parker a little bit better. Minkah Fitzpatrick was questionable. I think he had like some sort of like a wrist injury or something, but it looks like he's playing. Have you heard any update on that, Spread?
No, I have not.
Okay. If Minkah Fitzpatrick was out, that would make me like Hunter Henry like a whole lot more too. So I think we keep an eye on that news, but I do like Hunter Henry. I think I probably lean Hunter Henry over Devontae Parker just because I just don't trust his questionable and he's playing with a wounded knee tonight. So with Devontae Parker, it's always a crapshoot on how many snaps he's going to play, especially if he's injured. So just be careful of that play there.
All right. Do you want to build a Patriots shock the world?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Patriots shock the world. It's either going to be Zappe or Zeke for captain, right?
I go with Zeke, I think.
Okay, so let's go Zeke captain, but I think Zappe's got to be in there, and I think the Patriots defense has to be in there.
Okay.
Where do we go from here? So the Patriots are going to get the upset win. All the fans will be upset because it's going to knock them out of the top 2 spots.
I think we go with Pickens or Diontae because they're going to be playing catch up. So I think
okay, great. All right, let's put Pickens in there.
Okay.
Interesting here.
That leaves us with $59.50 left.
Yeah.
Per person.
And it's back to that same 4.
Yeah. Henry. I mean, if we got Zappe in there, we want a second.
I put Henry in there as well.
Yeah. Henry. And then 6,700 is what it leaves us at. I mean, honestly, I'd put Parker in there too, just to give Zappe that second receiving weapon. If we're going,
let's do that. I actually had the kicker for the what's it called, but let's switch it out. That'll be fun.
Yeah, and I like that too. I like the kicker too because that kicker works in this build too. So you got a lot of good directions you can go with that. Even the Steelers D works with this. All these guys work with this. Like this range here is all guys that are solid plays tonight. Yeah. So there's a lot of good choices tonight. I mean, the lineup should roll pretty easy tonight with the builds. You got to decide if you want to take a stand on one of these guys in this range, or maybe just kind of rotate them out. But I think tonight's a night where you want to have a solid core that you're dependent on. So make sure to think through each of your players thoroughly. Like I kind of like the passing game of Pittsburgh. So I'll probably have a ton of exposure to Trubisky and then, like a ton of exposure. I don't know which of those receivers I'll take a stand on, but I'll have exposure to both of them. I'll just probably lean more towards one of them by the end of this. But, one thing that you're going to want to do is subscribe to the YouTube page, hit like, get me to 15 likes, and I'll put up a shorter video a little later on with favorite plays. I'll give you 4 favorite plays, including a captain option later on. You're going to want to subscribe to the YouTube page so that you can sign up for the alerts to get that alert when that video is posted. And Spread's got a show coming up here pretty soon. Spread, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm going to be jumping on FanSpeak with Meg and Tyler. We'll be breaking down the NFL card this week. Of course, if you're in the Houston area, I'm also recording today, and that will be on tomorrow. ESPN 97.5, the game out there. We are on at 7 in Houston time. I think they're in Central. I'm not sure. A couple hours. I think it's 4 or 5 for me out here. But those are the 2 things I'm doing. But we're doing plenty of content there. Tyler and I turned our NBA season around. We went from -11 units to +7 units just over the last month. So we're heating up there, right? We're being our own little heat seekers there. Simon, as we continue to run up these accounts. Follow me at Spread Astaire, and I thank you once again for allowing me to come on and have some fun with you here on Heat Seeker Sports.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's always good having you on. I thank you for joining me, and thank you guys for watching. And make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and I'll get that video out later on tonight. Thanks, guys.